Good morning, everybody on ORT. It's really a privilege to introduce illustrious, charismatic, and a voice that truly uplifts. And you'll always remember, as we are doing it on Zoom, it allows you to focus in on really the incomparable and very special Andile Khumalo. So Andile, it's real, not only as a friend, but as a admirer of yours on so many levels. It's an absolute honor to introduce you to this ORT community. And I just want to read you about Andile because it's something truly special. And I spent about an hour this morning researching all of Andile's different parts of his journey. So the first part is quite an interesting, almost a paradox, but a beautiful paradox, certainly a commercial paradox. Andile is a seasonal entrepreneur, but also a chartered accountant. With over 15 years of business experience, he's the founder and CEO of Khumalo Co., an investment firm with interest in technology, media, telecommunications, financial services, and venture capital. He serves as the non-executive chairman of the investee company, Brave Group and INS. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what Brave is, and it's really worth looking it up afterwards, but it's really the #1 integrated service agency right across all the platforms of film, radio, digital, outdoor, and social media. And it's certainly a very innovative and creative platform and service agency to look at. Then INS is an enhanced communication amongst company investors and shareholders. But really where INS has pivoted is that they've really embraced digital to get, and I think this is a very core essence, which I loved reading about them, is getting the right message to the right people at the right time. So where did Andile start his career? And I think it's very interesting because of where ORT is involved. And ORT is so directly involved with Deloitte and also Andile, and hopefully maybe in 2020, who knows, with everything running properly, that we can actually see you in the physical and you can present to Deloitte. Andile started at Deloitte in 2000. Sorry, he started his career at Deloitte. And interestingly enough, he just said to us, prior to us getting all on the call, that actually Deloitte funded his university experience. So I think that's absolutely amazing. He then joined Investec as an investment banker. And then he was involved in a company which is really an amazing platform called MSG Africa, where he was the chief operating officer and also a partner, a founding partner. And you would always hear Andile and his voice. And when you hear him now later, you'll recognize that he always used to speak on Power FM. And he's a great interviewer. And he's got, again, this embraceable, emotive connection that he has with everybody that listens to him. Andile has served on various non-executive roles over the years, including a member of the Takeover Regulations Panel, a member of the Directorate of Market Abuse, a director of SAA, and president of ABASA, which I'd love to know just what the acronym is for ABASA. I nearly read it as APSA originally this morning, Andile. And then Andile founded, which I was also privileged to speak at, and also got involved in the initial I'm an Entrepreneur Summit. It's really what Andile describes as an apex platform for entrepreneurs to learn, to grow, to uplift, and to ensure their success in the future endeavors, certainly on a South African landscape, which offers so many different challenges. And that actually happens nationwide. So if I can recommend to anybody who's on this ORT call and to spread the word, it's certainly, when it comes to Cape Town, it's certainly worth going to one of the I Am Entrepreneur Summits. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of learning, and it's a lot of people all who are navigating through the rough seas of commercial reality within South Africa. He serves as a fellow of the Center of African Management and Marketing at the Gordon Institute of Business Science, and regularly writes for the Business Times, Sunday Times. And if you always look, for me personally, he's probably one of the best writers in the Sunday Times because, again, he has this ability to evoke a conversation and to challenge what is going on in our country, which is, I would say, is pretty easy to challenge, but it's always worth a conversation. And often speaks, which he's going to do today, on entrepreneurship, innovation, and most importantly, which we are all going through a period in our personal lives of transformation. So I'd like to introduce you to Andile, and what a privilege it is to have you on ORT Chat.
Thank you so much, Ari, for that introduction. Let me first thank Ari's mom, Shirley, whom I'm told is here. Thank you for bringing up a responsible young man. I've known him for a couple of years now, and it's a real blessing to have as a friend in my life. And thank you to everybody else who has joined us this morning. Lots of friends on the call. Dawn, I see you. Hello. I saw Richard earlier driving through the city, and everybody else that's here. Lawrence was just saying that he's dialing in from Tel Aviv. I'm really honored to be here. Very quickly, to fill in some of the gaps, I guess, at a personal level. I'm also a husband and a father. I'm married to a wonderful woman named Mandisa. We met at university. We have 2 children, Andisa and Wandi. So yeah, you can figure it out. It's Andile, Mandisa, Wandile, Andisa. So if you want to be confused in my family, that's a perfect place to be. My boy is 13 and my daughter is 9, although she thinks she's 19. And we live out here in Bryanston in Johannesburg. And as Ari said, that's pretty much what I've done with my life. My wife is also an entrepreneur. She runs 2 businesses. She runs a bookkeeping business that services mostly small businesses. And she owns a fitness brand, basically activewear brand called Black Strawberry, of which Ari has become an unofficial advisor to in terms of building. So thanks, Ari, for all the advice. It's certainly working out and she's doing really well. I thought that this morning, when Lisa and the crew were giving me the brief, I asked, who am I speaking to? Because it's always relevant. And they said, well, that's the difficulty you're going to have, Andile, because the audience is mixed. There's a lot of young people who are in the community, in the Jewish community, who are kind of the startup level. And there's obviously very mature business leaders, like I've already mentioned, and the faces that I can see certainly here. So if I do sound too elementary for you, please bear with us. There are other people that I guess, would benefit from the information. So please, I apologize in advance. And I look forward perhaps more so to the conversation we're going to hopefully have. And Ari is a human energy man. So I'm pretty sure he's going to open the lines and we're all going to be able to scream and shout and have a proper South African chat about our situation right now, both locally, of course, and globally with the pandemic we're facing. So I'm going to share a slide presentation that I prepared just to kind of just organize my thoughts and also keep up to the time that Lisa has made sure that I abide by. So I'm just going to look for a thumbs up from you guys if you can see this, and that will tell me that we are good. There we go. Got my thumbs up. All right. So I thought I'd share some thoughts on what it takes to thrive in a COVID world, which is rather paradoxal, but it's the reality we have to live with. And the 3 points I'm going to talk about today is my views of what are the key features of this world that we are in from a business perspective, and what these features mean for you as an entrepreneur. Because very often, unless you've got a degree in economics or finance and you're always able to link kind of these trends and these dynamics, it's not obvious to everyone what these things might mean for you and I on a day-to-day basis. And I'm going to bring it pretty local and talk about some of the developments that are happening, including some of the positive ones that have happened in the past few days around trying to turn the tide on things like corruption and how these things affect you and I as entrepreneurs. And then I wouldn't do it any justice, particularly to those younger in the audience, to share my thoughts on some of the things I think all of us, in fact, whether big or small, should be focusing on given the uncertain world that we live in. So what are the features of a COVID world, at least according to me? Well, obviously, as the image suggests, the whole world has had to stay home for the majority of this year. 7 or 8 months, we were all in a state of frenzy, in a state of uncertainty, not quite knowing, what is to come. How long will this pandemic take? To what extent will it affect business? To what extent it will affect all of our lives? And all of those things created uncertainty. All of those things created an environment for us where we didn't know what we didn't know. A few things have happened. Certainly, if you've looked at the numbers for South Africa, you'll know that we've had low economic growth. And that is probably the case for every single market in the world, other than those few countries that did not have a total shutdown. But of course, they had to manage the pandemic, which is essentially a humanitarian issue before it's an economic issue, okay? So there's lives and there's livelihoods that are affected. We decided to follow the route that we did. And I know that my president is always criticized. Like literally anybody that wakes up in the morning has something to say, they take a shot at our president. It's a thankless job. I, for one, think we did it very, very well. I think with all of the conflicting issues you needed to balance, with the inequality we've got in the country, with a high unemployment rate that we have, just with all the issues that South Africa has and the poverty that we have, I think that we followed a route that was obviously not perfect, but probably the best one from a humanitarian perspective. And you can see that with the stats that we're seeing. I was looking at my tweets this morning, and the number of fatalities that we've now experienced, how they've dropped, and the fact that our national recovery rates throughout the country is at 90%. Yes, you can talk about the wasted hospitals, field hospitals that were built, how they're never used. We can talk about corruption on PPE, but we did save lives. And I, for one, think on the balance of probabilities, we did well. However, the legacy that we have to carry is the low economic growth. So you would have seen that Q1, Q2 growth was down, I think 16, 17%. And then year on year, annualized growth on Q2 was down 51%. So the same quarter last year versus the same quarter this year, the economy halved in comparative terms, which is probably the best comparison because of the different times we've had this year relative to 12 months ago. And that's a feature of the COVID world. You have low economic growth. You have it why? Because the economy had to be compromised or was compromised as a result of the choices that we made and how we deal with this pandemic. Wrong, right? We can have a whole debate about what you guys think. At the time, people were complaining. I think if you look back and you have to be honest with yourselves, we probably did okay. However, the other impact of low economic growth and an economy halving is that we already had high unemployment in our country. It's perennial for us. We've had it for the longest time, and it hasn't gotten better over the decades. And obviously, with the economy halving in Q2, you're likely to have very high unemployment. So that is people that are looking for work and can't find it, which is kind of the official definition. But the expanded definition, the one that really matters to you and I, the people that have given up looking. And I think there are many who will continue to give up looking because it's obvious that the economy is performing under par. And we somehow need to find a way to revive it again. So there's going to be a lot more people joining the unemployment line, more so people just literally staying at home and no longer going out to look for work. So that's another feature of a COVID world. And for those two things, just number one and number two, for South Africa, keep in mind, these existed pre-COVID in any event. We already had an anemic economic growth and we already had unemployment. You can only imagine what steroids have been injected to those two problems. And we'll talk a little bit later on what that means for all of us as entrepreneurs. Number three is industry disruption. Anybody here in the tourism industry, anybody here is involved in aviation in some shape or form, whether it's value chain or not, anybody here who's in property, they will know that the features of this year have created an environment where some trends are likely to be with us for a long time. And that in itself has disrupted and upset the apple cart for many industries who've always operated a certain way. And I look, for example, at the world of work and think about all the industries that are involved in the world of work as we used to know it. We get up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we shower, we drop our kids off at school, or they go into the school bus or the school taxi, and off we go to work. And we sit there for 8-9 hours and we then journey back home. Whether you want to believe it or not, that is not likely to be the rest of the world for the rest of our lifetime. Yes, it'll continue to a large extent, but it will also be disrupted to a large extent. I, for one, don't understand why the hell I was going to the office so often anymore. And my team doesn't, and I'm getting a lot of productivity. And we're also creating a lot more opportunities to be with each other socially. Because being in the office gave me the impression we were together, but oftentimes we never really interacted. But because we are apart now, we create special moments to just hang out and be human beings, which is quite interesting. So I think what's going to happen to the world of work and to industry as a whole is going to be quite frustrating for the people that are in it, and quite exciting for you and I as entrepreneurs who've always been knocking on the door trying to get in. I was saying to a friend the other day that this is the first time in my working life where I can go to somebody with an idea, no matter how big or small their business is, no matter how much money they've got on the balance sheet, and for the first time they have to listen to me. And that's because they too are looking for answers because the world is so uncertain. So it's good for us who kind of are the challengers trying to get in the door, not so much for the people that have been in the building for decades trying to figure out, oh my goodness, what the hell is going on? And then the other feature that I think will be there for a while, and this is global, is the rate of corruption. And you've seen it in our country, and you will see it in many other countries too. And that is literally related to, let's call it the first two issues, where people are getting more and more desperate to get financial means, where greed is getting out of control, where moral decay is kind of accepted nowadays, that people will do certain things, and it's no longer a situation where people gasp and, oh my goodness, how could so-and-so do it? It's kind of, well, why didn't you kind of stop it? So we almost have accepted that human beings will be unethical, will be dishonest, and given an opportunity, they will do the wrong thing. Society no longer expects you to do that right thing, which is kind of sad, but it's a reality we're having to deal with. And I think in an environment where resources are limited, more and more human beings will answer the temptation of doing the wrong thing. And they will steal and they will embezzle and they'll take away from the world and only keep for themselves. And I also think that geopolitical dynamics have influenced that. You don't have to look further than China, Trump, and even to some extent Central Europe to see the kind of behaviors of quote unquote leaders. The leadership of selflessness, the leadership of sharing, the leadership of I'm a leader of the world and not just my nation, is dying or dead. And a lot more and more people in those countries are more concerned about themselves. Look at Brexit, look at the US, look at what these elections are doing and the debates that we're having or not having. It's all very interesting about how the human psyche is lending itself to an unjust world. And I think that with the pressure on resources, there's going to be much higher corruption. Hopefully, the countries and the governments will be able to handle it. And we've seen some interesting green shoots this past couple of weeks around people being brought to book. And then lastly, economists will tell you that the biggest stimulus you can do for your economy is to give confidence. And that's often in the things you say and do. And there's absolutely very low business confidence in our country. And that's really driven by already the first 4 points I've already raised. Some of the issues are global, of course, they're not unique to South Africa. But let's be blunt and fair, some of them are unique to South Africa. And the rate or the pace at which we are able to instill confidence in ourselves to get our own entrepreneurs and corporates and business leaders to invest in our economy, let alone trying to get foreigners to bring the much needed FDI. So I think these are the key features of, let's call it our business world in the context of the uncertainty and what COVID has done, and given the humanitarian crisis and pandemic and health issue that it is, and how that has affected kind of the economy. And then the question, as I related earlier, is what does this all mean to me? I could be observing all of this, I could be reading all of this, I see these things, I hear you, Andile, I've heard it before, I've heard the numbers being thrown around, I've seen the corruption, I've seen the high unemployment, so what? Well, let's start with the low economic growth. The image on the right is a half birthday cake. I know many of you have celebrated birthdays before. You probably have never seen a half birthday cake. And that's exactly what's happened to us as a country. Q2, economy halved. That's it. We don't have the rest of the cake. It's not there to share. It's not there to look at. It's not there to enjoy. You can't have it. But the amount of people that need to still have the cake has grown. So that has not changed much. And yet they only have half the resources to share. What that tells you is that the competition or the race for this half cake is going to be even tighter. It's going to be full of cheating. It's going to be everybody trying to get in front of the queue to get their piece of the cake, because everybody knows that we just lost half the cake and nobody wants to live without the cake. And that's what feeds into the corruption argument. And by corruption, I don't mean the most overt things. For example, the gentleman here, by the way, he's the fancy house that has been taken by the Hawks from the gentleman with the asbestos scandal in the Free State. I ran past it, so it's up the road from my house, and it's a hell of a beautiful house. And I've always wondered why the security was so tight. Now I know. But anyway, that I'm not talking about things that are necessarily that obvious, right? Where you get given a 280 million rand contract, you subcontract to someone who subcontract to someone, and you literally steal all the money and you bribe politicians. There's a lot of other corruption that's happening in closed doors, particularly in corporates. And it's not in the interest of corporates to be putting those out in the public domain. So a lot of stuff doesn't get reported that's actually happening. And I think that the race for resources is driven by the fact that the cake has just been halved. Unemployment, for me, this is probably the thing that should scare us the most. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to tell you that what work does is that it gives you dignity. The ability to wake up in the morning and have something to go and do, and at the end of the week or end of the month, somebody pays you for having done it. That in itself makes you feel like a contributing member of society. And it tends to deal with many other social ills. One of the big social ills we're dealing with in our country is gender-based violence. One of the key reasons why men abuse women is because of their own insecurities that have nothing to do with the women that unfortunately suffer on their hands. And in a socio-economic environment where these men are not engaged, where these men are not contributing members of society, and they wake up every day, they sit down and they have nothing to do, and it builds frustration, resentment, and takes away dignity. In a country, by the way, I must remind you, comes from decades, if not centuries, of colonization, apartheid, where the majority of our people, Black people, already came into this freedom with very little dignity. This problem is by far the single most important for me. It manifests itself in jobs, but it's a problem of economic inequality, where the haves have a lot and the have-nots have not a lot. And there's not enough of a middle class of people who are able to take their children to good schools, who are able to have decent work, to live in a decent home with eat decent food every day and live a middle life, a middle income life, the life I grew up in. So the biggest challenge and the biggest impact, I think, on social unrest is the fact that so many of us are out of economic activity. I like to call it, too many of us have got nothing to lose. And you can't go into a wager with somebody who has no interest in the outcome, because then they don't participate. So we have to find a way to get more and more people into economic activity. And one of the realities of a COVID world is because of the shutdown, but even before the shutdown, we were already in the economic environment we were in. You've got problems on problems on problems that are going to manifest themselves into droves, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of more South Africans being out of work. I don't know if you guys saw the stat. I did tweet it earlier this week as well on my handle. It showed that between 2009 and 2019, South Africa created net jobs of 2.4 million. Okay, so 2.4 million net jobs brought into the economy between 2009 and 2019, 10 years. In the 7 months of lockdown, we lost 2.2 million. So, in fact, I think it was in 4 months of the 7 months. In 4 months, we lost 2.2 million. So we almost outdid what we did in 10 years, we outdid in 4 months. And that has huge socioeconomic impact. And you will see it starting to manifest itself. I saw Vavi on TV yesterday. There's a reason why he was looking like the people on this image. You know, this is a manifestation of this inequality that's just been even stretched even further by this horrible pandemic. Industry disruption, thankfully, from a positive perspective, we've all woken up to the fact that indeed e-commerce is real and it's awesome. That's going to disrupt a lot of models. It's also going to enable a lot of ideas from an entrepreneurship and an innovative perspective. But there's going to be business models that are just no longer going to be sustainable. And I touched on property for me as one of the most interesting. So you can look at all the listed REITs right now as a great time for you to go in and buy some equity, right? I'm sure some of you have considered it. You look at all the property funds and you think to myself, man, look at the share price, it's so low. Yes, you know the reality is what's happened in the 7 months, but you may take the view, hey man, life is going to go back to as usual. My personal view is that it won't. My personal view is also that not that everyone's going to die off and there's never going to be property companies anymore. But I do think that some business models will be unsustainable. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens from here on out. But this is not something we can avoid. There is absolutely disruption in industries. And if you are in an industry and you haven't yet seen the disruption and you think you've been spared, trust me, you're missing something. You should be worried. And then the high levels of corruption. Other than the fact that, corruption is what it is, the one element of corruption that nobody ever really thinks through is how it affects business opportunities. It hurts business to have corruption. The gentleman who got arrested, Mr. Sodi, from up the road here, took away that opportunity from businesses, Black-owned businesses in the Free State, who could quite easily have done the work, made a decent but fair return, and continue to be sustainable and create jobs. He took all of that money for himself, paid off bribes, and that took that money, those funds, that economic opportunity out of society, out of the value chain of entrepreneurship, tax paying, job creation, everything else, rate paying, everything else that's supposed to flow, all the economic dividends, trickle down economics, he took it away. That's what corruption did. It took that away. And more corruption means less business opportunities for all of us, black or white, because it means that I cannot go in there and compete pound for pound, which means the customer is not going to get the best price, best value, best quality, which means the whole entire structure as we know it crumbles. So this is so important to fight because it compromises every effort of good governance that we'll ever have. And hopefully our president can get the right support and build the right confidence himself to start and continue being decisive about those that don't support the eradication of corruption. But for you and I as an entrepreneur, it literally means there's less business opportunities. For those who ever responded to a government tender that you would see on your newspaper or on your tender bulletin online, there's a saying that happens in the tender world. And the saying is that if you already do not have the inside track on the business opportunity you're seeing as an ad in the paper, forget about it. What that says is that if you don't already know the director general or the head of procurement and he's your mate and you have drinks with him on Thursday nights, on Puza Thursdays, if you already don't have the inside track, that tender is already spoken for. Now that's painful, that's horrendous, because it means that government in its procurement is probably overpaying. It means that all of the people that could be bidding for the work don't get equal opportunity. So corruption hurts all of us as business people because it means less business opportunities and essentially more greed and more inequality. And then lastly, low business confidence means less business activity. I've been trying to support a lot of restaurants in Johannesburg of late. Some people, some of them owned by friends, some of them I don't really know the owner. And you sit there and you look around and you think on a Tuesday morning or Tuesday lunchtime, how full this place used to be. And you can just see that, the patronage has dropped because of this pandemic, obviously, but because of this pandemic and the economic impact of it. So if there's one thing we could have asked for is business confidence. And that comes from our leadership, both business and political, to provide some of that confidence, because that is what drives business activity. If there's no business activity, you and I cannot get our businesses out there. We can't sell to our customers and we can't collect cash. So these desperate times therefore call for some desperate measures, which is what I would like to wrap up this talk with and share some thoughts on what I think could be useful for you as an entrepreneur out there to think about. And some of the things that I've seen and applied in the businesses I'm involved in, and it's held us in good stead. They're not probably things that you don't know about, but it's always good to hear them again. So the principle of what I'm about to share with you is what I like to call the income statement versus the balance sheet. So I'm proposing that you as an entrepreneur in a COVID world, you need to generate a life you must call your income statement life, and another life you must call your balance sheet life. So for the non-accountants in the room, the income statement is the thing that looks like the thing on the top right there, right? You register your sales, you take off your costs, and you either have a profit or a loss. And as you can see, a low-fee company here has got a profit of $54,000. So it's doing well. But an income statement does what? It tells you the net income that you generate. I don't know from reading that income statement what this company actually does to generate its sales. And frankly, I don't care. I don't care because I already know it's a good company. You know why? Because it loses less money than it makes. So it generates 500,000 of revenue and it ends up with a net income of 54,000. So there you go. Positive. Yes, it could be a once off, it could be whatever. Point is, it's in the black, as they call it. So the income statement life is the part of your life that should just focus on generating income. You need to understand and accept that we live in an uncertain world. And one of the things that will be very difficult to do is to always match your passions with your income. These times call for you to focus on generating income, which may mean doing something you can do, doing something you're good at doing that you may not necessarily like to do. Why? Because you need to generate the income. The balance sheet life is the wealth creation life. This is the stuff where your assets and your liabilities, and at the bottom out pops either a net asset number or a net liability number. And you want to be a net asset, right? And this is where we will record the things you own, less the things you owe, and what you eventually end up owning. So this is where you build for the future. You build for your children, you build for your family, you build for yourself. This is the wealth creation. So in the income statement, I'm generating income. In the balance sheet, I'm creating wealth. The balance sheet activities or your balance sheet life will be the things that you know will one day generate tons of wealth for you. But they may not do that now. Why? Because you are in an uncertain world. You didn't choose it. It's just the way it is. So I'm advocating that you do what an old man once taught me. An old man who was a friend of my father's once said to me, he owned a printing company. He said to me, Andile, the problem with our country is that people think with their stomachs. You shouldn't think with your stomach. Your stomach wasn't made for thinking. The brain was made for thinking. But what happens is that when people are hungry, they start doing things, but they don't think about those things. And that's what lands them in trouble. You cannot think on an empty stomach, ladies and gentlemen. And if you still want to stick by your dream and not think about generating income, you'll start thinking with your stomach. And when your stomach growls and you're trying to think, what happens? You get distracted. All you think about is you're hungry. Have you ever tried sitting at your desk when you can feel you're hungry, but you got that one more email or that one more document you want to finish, and you're like, I'll eat just now, but the stomach keeps reminding you that you better pause. And then at some point you get frustrated. You're like, you know what, actually, let me just stop and let me go get something to eat. That's what happens when you're trying to build a business, but you're not paying attention to the income statement life. You're not generating enough income. So I plead with you that these are not the times where beggars can be choosers. Times are tough and they're probably going to get tougher. Please balance your life between generating income. And that may mean doing things you just happen to be good at, that you can do, that you can generate an invoice and cash flow for, that you may not necessarily love doing anymore because you really want to be kind of committed to your project that's going to make you a dollar millionaire one day. I'm not saying give up on your project. I'm saying be sensible. Generate some income. Make sure the stomach's got food so you don't think with your stomach and you start thinking with your brain. That will allow your brain to start working on the wealth creation, on that future program. Now, how do we do that? 3 things I'm going to focus on: sales, costs, and cash, but then we'll open up for Q&A and hopefully an old South African chat. Number 1, if you're not selling, you're not in business. And it sounds obvious, but I know many entrepreneurs who don't understand the importance of sales. This must be now your number 1 priority. There is literally nothing more important than being out there and selling as much as you can. As I indicated earlier, this is also the time to be bold, to knock on the doors that would otherwise be closed, because everybody's looking for a solution to their problem. Everybody didn't even know the problem they had now, and they are very open to understanding what ways those problems can be solved. And typically, corporates are not the best at solving problems quickly. Typically, entrepreneurs and startups, particularly those that are driven by technology, are often better than they are at solving some of their own problems. So if ever there was a time, you should be knocking on the door more often than it is now, because it's likely to be more open. You have to track how much time you spend on sales activities. You have to make sure you're spending a huge amount selling, sending the email, making the calls, doing the coffees. But all you're doing is you're trying to get your product and your service out there for someone to issue you an invoice, and you're able to deliver it and you collect. Also, think about delighting your clients. You know, if you are, for example, in a business that deals with stock, you know, my wife's active wear business. So she obviously does designs by season. And obviously the past 7 months, no one's going to gym. No one is out there living an active lifestyle. No one is doing errands because we've been in lockdown. So what she's done is that she's still launched a new line, but she's taken a lot of that stock and she's thrown it as part of the bundle offering. So some of those, buy the latest one, you get 50% off the previous season. It's things that Ari would understand more than I do. And I've seen her get the traction and the love back because people are delighted. Because what's the point of the stock sitting at home? So do all you can to be in front of customers and sell, sell, sell. This is an obvious one, keeping costs low. So you saw the income statement live, right? It starts with revenue that we just spoken about. The next thing is cost. Whether it's cost of sales or your overheads, it's costs. This is also another good time for you to keep costs low. Why? Because every business out there is trying to survive. So everybody that you pay to continue running your business, whether it's your landlord or your supplier, if ever there was a time to go and squeeze them in what you are paying, it is now. Because they too want to keep you as a customer. And they too will bend over backwards to make sure that you stay in business and you continue to use them. So you have the leverage. Just like your customers have the leverage on you, you have the leverage on your suppliers. So please pay attention to what your costs are. Have a real look and don't be scared to make the big changes. If working from home works for your small team, why do you have an office? Get them laptops, get them access to Wi-Fi, get them access to data, and let them work at home. Do the costs, maybe, just maybe. Your employers are happier and maybe they're more productive, maybe. So don't be stuck in the old world. We're in a different space now. Allow yourself to look at your cost base and really criticize whether or not you need the overheads that you've always had. And lastly, my favorite topic, and that is cash is king. There's a reason cash is king, and that's because that's the oxygen of your business, whether you like it or not. You can send proposals at Edom. If someone is not paying you cash for your product or service, you're not really running a business. Maybe you're doing a hobby, and hobbies are okay. They're just not businesses. So if you are in business, whatever you do, please preserve cash. Try to collect as early as you possibly can. Try to convince clients to pay you some of it even upfront if they have to. Try and delay the payments to your own suppliers to the extent possible, with some consciousness, of course, that they are also businesses who need the cash, right? So just like you're using your leverage, they will use theirs against you as well. So be logical. My personal view is I always pay small businesses on time, and I always stretch the big companies. You see, because the big companies have got shareholders. They can go for all sorts of things like rights issues and get more cash from the public markets. The small guy who's supplying me t-shirts can't. So I always try and pay him early. And I try to make sure I stretch the terms as much as I can on the corporates, but don't tell them I said that. And then as much as possible, try and preserve cash, even with your investment instruments. Yes, there's going to be opportunities for you to get into certain investments because of what's happening and all the uncertainty. But just keep in the back of your mind that cash is king. And you must have access to liquidity as much as you possibly can. So in closing, if you forgot everything that I said today, my advice, my guidance to you in living in this time is be sensible. You cannot think on an empty stomach. Stomachs were not made for thinking. Brains were made for thinking. So look at your entrepreneurial life and say, what are my income statement activities? What are the things that generate income? I don't have to love them. But you know what, man, I'm good at this stuff. And people keep coming to me to do it. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to build. And I know I've got food in my stomach. I don't have to think with my stomach. I don't get growls in the middle of the night. Do that. This is not the time to be picky. Please do that. And then the other life of yours is the balance sheet life. Don't lose the vision. Don't lose the dream. Spend some time always constantly working at perfecting the dream. Because you see, the income is not the reason you're an entrepreneur. The reason you're an entrepreneur is this dream. But at this point, you got to be sensible about how you balance those two lives. Thank you very much, Ari. That's me for now.
Andile, yeah, thank you. That's certainly a lot of food for thought. Excuse the pun. We do need full stomachs. Here's the question. You've used the word 3 tips to thrive or to sustain in a COVID world. If you can just give us some actual examples that you've experienced, or some examples in all the different businesses that you're involved in, some real tangible action that you've taken to share with everybody, that would be really beneficial.
Great stuff. Thanks for that. So let me start with Brave. So for those who know the advertising industry, You get appointed by a client, you get given a contract that can be broken in 30 days. And clients say, you know, you're going to be my agency and we'll give you briefs and you'll do work. And we could already anticipate that what's likely to happen is that clients are not going to go put themselves in a negative PR vibe by saying we've fired our agency. All they're going to do is that they're just going to reduce the briefs. Because if they reduce the briefs, it means they spend less on the media and, you know, on the creative, sorry, first, and then of course on the media that drives the creative. And we decided to be proactive and go to clients and say, we'd like to maintain our retainer. If you want to cut it, these are the changes that we think you can afford to make. But we also think that you can spend more money, not on traditional media that tends to be very expensive. And thanks to digital media, it allows you a lot more bang for your buck. So what eventually started happening, Ari, is that we did a lot more creative work that was purpose-built for a specific platform called digital, as opposed to creating pieces of work that can go kind of, you know, as many channels as possible. And what that did is that it allowed our clients to save money on the media spend, which meant that they were able to pay us our fees for the creative work. So we've seen that. In my other business, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a team of 6 people that were in an office space pre-COVID. And they worked together every day as a team. And as soon as lockdown started, within 3 days, we had laptops for everybody. They were all at home. And we were having a discussion in the middle of lockdown that, you know, we're only going to go back to any office next year. And actually, we've now decided we don't need an office. And I've been successful in getting myself out of that office full time because the guys are going, we need to get together maybe once a week. Let's just go to a shared office space, spend a day together, catch up, and go off and do your work. And for our business, it's weird. It actually works. Would I have thought that before? No. I had this fixation that people must drive to an office at 8 o'clock, kind of clock in, sit there, have lunch at 12, have coffee at 3, and they must all go at 5. And that perception, it's changed my mind and changed my life. But I almost had to be ready and almost be prepared to allow my mind to be changed. Because it's so easy for all of us to kind of just stick to what we know. Somebody wrote a piece about that the reason why human beings will always make a decision based on history is because history is what we know. Everything in the future is an unknown. So I'll say, no, I want to buy a share in this company. And I'll say, oh, because, you know, it's really done well. Me buying a share today is about the future of the company, right? I mean, I don't make the returns based on its history. I make the returns based on what it does in the future. But my only reference is the history because it's the only thing that I know. And this world is calling for us to start becoming knowledgeable about what's likely to happen in the future and not sitting in the comfort zone of, you know, when a pig is in mud, you know, in its sty, you know, and it's comfortable and it's warm and it's wet and muddy. That's how we are when we sit and make decisions that are based on the history. It feels comfortable, but it's actually not, it's actually incongruent that you're making future decisions based on the past. You should be making future decisions based on what you think the future will be, not on your knowledge of what the past was. So I've seen it practically, and then at INS, I think the last example is probably INS, and you touched on it in the intro. So what INS does, it does shareholder communications for listed companies. And the history of the business is that it was a printing company because, you know, all your circulars and your annual reports were things that get shipped to you and you get it by registered mail and you go to your post office and you get the 300-page growth points annual report and you start reading it on a Saturday morning. Nowadays, everything's electronic. And because we were electronic, we were able to continue to service our clients during lockdown. So, and that has meant more investment in technology and less investment in kind of the physical infrastructure that we would otherwise have had to do in the past. I hope you're not on mute, Ari, if you're talking.
No, I'm not on mute. I'm not on mute. Dean, sorry, I saw, Dean Sand, I saw you asked a question. Maybe you should just ask and open it up.
Yeah.
It's on the room chat.
Yeah, thanks. No, just a question, you know, you talk about thriving during this time, and I do believe that the focus over the next certainly 1, 2, 3, even maybe 5 years is for the smaller businesses, the entrepreneurs to really grow and thrive. And I think that's where the employment's going to come from, new thinking. in order for these businesses to survive, they need resources, they need funding, support from various sectors of the economy and that, and including governments. But the challenge that I want to ask you is that, is it worth for a lot of these small businesses relying on support or perhaps funding from government when it's so slow to get the funding, it's very difficult with red tape? Should you rather say, forget what government has to offer and let's go and engage with the private sector and see how much we can get from there and just build and just ignore government for now?
So, Dean, thanks for the question, bro. Thanks for coming through this morning. I'm going to answer you in as honest way as I can. You know, I'm conflicted in that answer. On the one hand, I know that it is not sustainable or smart to totally disengage your government. As disappointing as they are, as frustrating as they are, I know that in the long term, it's not in our interest to disengage them and almost create a parallel state of a world of private sector versus a world of public sector. It needs to be one country. But I'm not going to lie and tell you that if you're an entrepreneur, you should build a business that's reliant on government. I think if you live in this country, that's probably the dumbest thing you could ever do. So, and many, particularly Black entrepreneurs, are very reliant on the state because of its procurement policies. And that procurement policy that favors Black women, Black youth, has also allowed kind of the poorest environment of corruption, right? So I go and I pay a bribe, and you complain that Andile got the job. I say, oh, yeah, it's because you're white, bro. I'm Black. I got the job because I'm Black. And the reason you complain is because you're white. Whereas in truth, I got the job because I bribed somebody. I just happen to be Black, but I'm a thief. So bluntly, absolutely, I would not advise anybody to build a business that relies on government as a client. I do think we all need to find our own ways to continue to engage government, because we can't have an economy where government has become so dysfunctional that we've disengaged them and we think things can only work if we do them. I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Andile, can I ask you a question? Hi, brother. It's your sister here. How are you?
Good, and you?
Andile, I just want to ask a question, and I'm asked by so many small businesses and entrepreneurs. I mean, everyone seems to have rushed out to invest in some sort of online or digital platform. But in my opinion, it's not always the answer to the problem. And I think maybe if you can just talk through a little bit about digital transformation and how important it is in going forward in our new world, which I hate that saying, but let's use it for want of another word.
We should find a better word, right? Because it's not quite the new world, but it's not the old world either, right? My view, Dawn, again, bluntly, because we're amongst friends, is I can't see how you can build a business that's going to be successful for years to come if it is not operating on the basis of really good technology. And I don't mean the business itself needs to be a technology business. Am I making any sense? For me, technology is a better enabler of business and should cut across. The things I talk about when I talk about industry disruptions, I can't see how you can build a business that's going to be competitive if it's not hot when it comes to delivery, delighting clients, completion, fulfillment, customer care, feedback, anything that's not driven by technology, that has minimal human interaction, and that just allows for seamless fulfillment. Of course, it also means that the human interaction becomes more valuable. So in other words, you let the machine do the stuff that humans don't have to do, but you let the human do the things that machines can never do. So here we are connecting. This is substandard, because when you and I are sitting at your favorite bootleggers there in Cape Town, and having coffee, my experience is different. Your experience is different because we're humans. It's not like this. This is okay. I see you, we get to talk, I hear what you're saying, I see your face, but it's not the same connection. I thrive, I seek human interaction. Why? Because I'm a human being. So in my view, I think what technology will do or should do is make us as entrepreneurs and as business people and business leaders value more what humanity brings to business and create the spaces and areas for the human touch to really arrive and be there, because a computer can't give you that. And take away from the human everything that a computer can. You know, my auditing profession, my favorite example. When I was doing articles at Deloitte, we would do tests. So, you know, you got the trial balance and you're auditing, I don't know, fixed assets. You would go and you'll test the fixed assets balance. You take a sample and you go and look at the desks and chairs and cars and trucks there. You test the depreciation, etc. With the advent of technology and with the advent of machine learning and AI, I should be able in real time to run an entire list of every transaction that's happened in the company. And the computer should be able to tell me whether the transactions were accounted for correctly. You know, did the debit go to the right place and did the credit go to the right place? However, the sophistication of fraud isn't in the accounting. But I should no longer be doing stupid tests. I should be now spending time on judgment. You know, because that's what Steinhoff is all about. Steinhoff is not about the accounting. I can confirm that Mr. Euster knows how to do debits and credits. So if he needed to account for his fraud, he probably passed that test. The test there was about, was this ethically the right thing to do? You know, and we human beings have that intuition. When you read a set of financials or you read an agreement and you go, what is it trying to do? And how did the company actually do? Why is it disclosed this way? This makes no sense. Those are intuitions that only humans can do better than computers. So in short, I guess what I'm trying to say is absolutely for me, technologies, you can't build a business without it. But I think we should be looking for the opportunity to bring more of the human touch for the elements where the human touch trumps technology. And that's probably the missed opportunity. We're so focused on the tech, we don't often look for the human interaction that allows you to be competitive. You know, imagine if your customer care department did something electronically, but they also did something personal. Like the CEO every once in a while just wrote you a hand note and sent you a letter. And you opened this letter and it came from the CEO of the company and he says, "Dear Don Nathan, I've noticed you've bought all of these things over the past few years. I just wanted to say we really appreciate it. I've put something in here to show our appreciation." I could send you an email, I can send you a text message, it'll say the exact same thing. But if I write you a letter, that'll mean something different. So I think we're missing the human interaction opportunity.
Andile, there's Mark Balkan, he wants to ask you a question.
Hey, Andile, thanks, Aria. More a comment on Dawn's point and to maybe just hone down a bit on this. You know, in my view, technology is going to play a huge part because a lot of businesses are not going to go back to the same levels that they were in the past. And so we think that businesses will be hybrid. There'll be obviously the physical piece and the digital piece that will work together. Obviously, some businesses, if you're a plumber or a hairdresser, very difficult to provide that service digitally, but you can really improve your business and you can really improve the way that you treat clients if you take bookings on a digital platform where clients can easily find you and book a time. And imagine if the pool service guy or the plumber took a credit card, how much simpler would that be? A really simple thing. So I think to say that people shouldn't move fast towards digital is I think they just won't benefit from what's happening in the world. Systems are being built that are making people able to earn more, get back to where they were, but the world is different. And so you won't be able to avoid going onto digital platforms and digitizing your business. If you don't do it, you'll probably become obsolete, actually.
Absolutely. Ari?
Wait, sorry, apologies. Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions from all the participants out there? Before we end off, I know, Dawn, you're going to say some sweet words around Andile. More sweet words, Andile.
More sweet words.
You are worthy
Sorry,
of them.
Andile, you've got me back again. We did engage a lot throughout COVID, Andile and I. So, Andile, I really want to thank you on behalf of ORT and all the participants for a really engaging, inspiring, insightful, powerful conversation that you've had with us. You're always so open and candid. And what I've always found about you is you're so open to sharing your ideas and your incredible pool of wealth. And I've always found what has always struck me as being so incredibly awesome about you is your energy and your passion, and how no matter how uncertain and how bad the crisis is, you always focus on the highest North Star. And that is really an incredible gift that you have. And, you know, in life, they say we spend a lot of the first part of our life looking for our gift. And then the true value and purpose and meaning of life is when you actually give that gift to others. So thank you for giving us your gift, Andile. And really, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I'm very passionate. I'm not a CA, but you and I have spoken before on income statement and balance sheet, and how I'm not an income statement person. I only focus on the balance sheet, and really putting that into perspective for all of us, which is so important. And so many of the small businesses that I've been consulting to, they've drowned, or they've not been able to make it because they're focused only on the income statement. So really, we cannot thank you enough for sharing your tips on thriving through this uncertain time, and, you know, finding so many gems for us to take away that are so usable, so simple, and yet so effective. So Andile was in my book that myself and Les wrote a little while ago, and I want to share one of the things that he said right during hard lockdown, when we phoned you and we said, will you actually contribute to our book? And Andile's message was, this was in the first 21 days of lockdown, and his message to us then was, people are listening, doors are opening, guys, tune in. I don't know if you remember that, but really, thank you. It's so meaningful, and it's such a powerful part of the book. Thank you so much, Andile.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Before I leave, I do want to say, first of all, thank you, Dawn. Those are the nicest words. I mean, Ari has never said such nice words about me before. Thank you so much. And I've known him so much longer. I want to just say one thing about our country and about hope. Wheels of justice move slowly, but they do move. So this is not the time to give up. I thank you.
Thank you, Andile, and we look forward to hosting you in person next time. So thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Andile.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.